One of the most important things for us at Cirque is our audience. And so with my colleagues in Montreal, we embarked on an experiment. And the experiment, we weren't exactly sure what was going to take place. And so we worked with my now good friend Beau and his company to do an experiment to really look into what our audiences were feeling as they were watching our shows. But I don't really want to get ahead of myself, so at this point I'm going to turn it over to Beau, and he's going to take us through this experiment.
The only way to be creative, the only way to see differently, is to go to the very place that our brain evolved to avoid. The only place we can be creative is uncertainty. Right? That's the very place we have to go. And yet everything in our behavior is an attempt to avoid that place. Creativity begins with uncertainty. Creativity begins with a question. It begins with not knowing rather than knowing. Nothing interesting begins with knowing. If you want to shift from A to B, your first step is not B. Your first step is not A. To go from A to not A, to let go of those assumptions and biases and those meanings, to step into uncertainty. So what happens, what can happen if you're willing to step into uncertainty? That is where Cirque lives.
I don't believe there's any science behind the way that Cirque du Soleil moves along through its creative process. And I would actually even say that science could be the very death knell of our creative process.
I'll leave now.
And inside this safe space, they start to dream, they start to plan. And the interesting thing is, everybody in the company has access to this creative room. And yet very few people enter the creation room for one of our shows. It's not locked, it's available, it's open 24/7. And yet people realize there's something magical happening inside that place of uncertainty, the place where these creators, they could be 6, 8, 10, 12 people who are involved in making a new show. Bringing us to a new place involves a lot of people with very, very passionate ideas. And these passionate ideas actually create a lot of creative tension. And the tension is asked for, and the tension is intentional. So we try to really find a way to accelerate this creative community. And this phrase that I start to use, which is called the community of vulnerables. And when you have a community of vulnerables, it means you're all the same, so you can actually reduce your vulnerability. Now, I think all of you were offered a small gift when you came into the room today. Could you all pick up that small gift? So we're going to create a mini smile movement. Cirque's had one objective. So we're in 60 countries all over the world, but the objective is to make people smile. And so we're going to do that today. Hashtag Cirqueway. So let's everybody put on our clown noses. We could do like a selfie.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, cheese.
Creators think differently than you and I do, by and large. And we see them as a little bit different too. We always see artists and creators as sort of, a little bit of a different brand of individuals. They have a very strong drive and they have a very, very strong vision. And the one thing that I love is that for artists and creators, they don't see the glass as half empty or the glass as half full. They actually see the glass as overflowing. For Cirque, innovation has occurred because nothing is considered impossible. Critics were able to use certain words to describe Cirque du Soleil, but we could never find great words that our audience would use as language when they were describing us. They would say things like, wow, oh my God, life-changing, but it was really tough for them to name their actual emotions.
So the experiment was this. There were actually a number of experiments, and the basic question was, what is awe and who cares? We're talking about low-level perceptions, unconscious biases, things you don't have conscious control over. Okay, so we're measuring the brain activity during the show, when people say they're experiencing awe, as well as the consequence of actually being in the show, or seeing the show. So I'm going to focus first on perception, the behavior. Well, the first thing that people feel is they feel closer to others. Your ego, your sense of ego diminishes. You feel small but connected, which means you actually become pro-social. Your behaviors are more in the interest of another rather than just yourself. Right? You have a closer connection to the out-group as well as the in-group. The second thing that happened is that people had a less need for cognitive control. In other words, they were more comfortable with uncertainty itself. They didn't need closure nearly as much after the show as compared to before the show. So they felt pro-social to other people, their ego diminished, and they were more comfortable with uncertainty. We could actually predict whether or not audience members were experiencing awe to an accuracy of 75%. The significance of that means that the brain activity was common across all people. Their brains were actually synchronized in that moment, which is probably why they felt connected to the people around them. So this is awe. This is what it looks like, and this is the consequences of what happens when you experience it.
I've always had a question about how the audiences are part of the overall puzzle of Cirque. So if you think about Cirque as a jigsaw puzzle, there was always for me one piece that was missing. And the missing piece is something that you have absolutely no control over, and it's the audience, and how the audience shows up every night at your show. So the question is, what do we do with this? What do we do with this information now that we have it? First of all, is we want to share it with all of the creators that we work with, but all other creators as well. Because the amazing thing about having this knowledge is that now you know the power that you have in terms of the audience. What a powerful tool to know that the audience is leaving the theater in a different way than they had come in. We know that we are going to step into uncertainty tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. But the one thing that we know we're always going to strive for is the impossible, and we're going to take care of our creators, provide them with a safe space, provide them with the opportunity to be uncertain, and to live out their dreams and put the best work on stage. Thank you.
Thank you.